A new neighbor moved in next door. Everyone swears he's lived here for years. Everyone at the potluck was cracking jokes and elbowing this tall guy I'd never seen before. Some mysterious, pale, Slavic-looking man named Tony. Dee brought her, usual 24-pack from the brewery, and somehow Tony was given the first beer from the case, a privilege I'd never once received. Then I saw Jess, our building manager, challenge Tony to a game of darts with her son. They looked like experts when they played, as if Jess always did this with Tony, except she didn't. I'd never seen Jess or her son play darts. It was all very weird. I swam through the rec room, ignoring the Super Bowl noise on the TV, and individually asked my neighbors who this Tony guy was. All I got were laughs and reminders of all the great things he'd done around our building. Tony? He's so handy. He fixed the pressure in my sink once. Used to be a plumber. Such a nice guy. He gave $100 for my daughter's bat mitzvah. Did you know that? His 4-layer cake at the Christmas party was incredible. Remember the icing? I did not remember the icing. I'd been a decade-long resident of this 12-plex and attended almost all of our monthly parties in the rec room. I could tell you the names of all the residents and which suite they lived in. Tony did not live in any of them. Why was everyone pretending that he did? Eventually, I built up the courage to do what had to be done. I cracked open a beer, took a big swig, and then walked up to Tony with an open palm. "Hey pal, nice to meet you. I'm Ignatius." Tony raised an eyebrow and cracked a laugh. "Nice to meet you, Iggy. I'm Anthony. Is this how you say, a role play?" I couldn't place the accent. Somewhere between Budapest and Moscow. "A role play? No. I don't believe we've met before." Tony chuckled again and lightly punched my shoulder. "Always the funny guy, huh? Book any new roles?" My last auditions had been pretty unsuccessful the past few months, but this was not the time to discuss that. "No, I'm being serious, Tony. I don't think we've met. How long have you lived here?" Tony giggled and clapped his hands. "Oh man, you are very convincing, you know." "I'm not. This isn't a joke." He dragged Dee into the conversation. "Iggy's doing a great performance, check him out." She cracked a new beer. Iggy giggly, "New stand-up?" "No guys, this isn't. I'm not doing a bit." I took a step away from them both, gesturing at the pale stranger. "I don't know Tony, I've never met him." Dee narrowed her eyes and drank her beer. "Is this like anti-humor or something?" Flustered, I walked away and grabbed the first person I could find. "Jess!" She was mid-conversation with Marcello, who was giving her son a piggyback ride. She spun around, startled. "Iggy? Jess, this isn't a joke. I'm seriously kind of worried. I don't remember Tony at all. Everyone says they remember him living here, but I do not. Do you remember Tony? Please tell me." Yes, of course I remember Tony." She looked at me with a tilted head. "For how long?" I don't know. The whole time I've lived here. 7 years. 7 years? No fucking way. No, that's not right." "What's not right, Iggy?" Dee and Tony came over looking really concerned. "Everything okay?" I lifted my hands. I was completely dumbfounded by how all of this was happening. Utterly flabbergasted. Were all my neighbors just fucking with me? I didn't want to work myself up any further, so I let it go. "You know what? Sorry guys, I'm a little drunk." All my neighbors stared at me, unconvinced. There was a lull in the room, an icy silence. Dee took another sip of beer. "By a little, you mean a lot drunk?" Everyone laughed. The tension broke instantly. Tony even gave a little clap. "Iggy, you always a funny guy, man. Every time." I left the party early. I didn't really know what else to say. I was a little embarrassed, but mostly frustrated and angry. How is this possible? Am I missing something? Maybe I'd been hit with some kind of selective amnesia. Maybe I bonked my head somewhere and happened to erase the root memory of some random European neighbor from my building. But when I returned home, I knew that wasn't the case. Next to my apartment, 012, Where there should have been a cramped slide door leading into the utility closet, was now in its place a simple mahogany door, much like my own, and above it the numbers read 0 and 3. No way. This is fucked. I touched the door. It felt real. The doorknob. Brass. The numbers. Plastic. Bolting into my own place, I locked myself inside. I could feel the minute vibrations of an oncoming panic attack course through my torso. I exhaled over and over until the feeling lessened a bit. It's okay. I'm okay. Let's think about this. I was inside the utility closet this morning, recording power usage numbers for the strata, which meant I should have video evidence. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through my most recent clips. Sure enough, I found a video from this morning. The camera panned across the power meters, recording the kilowatt hours. 10, 11, 12 meters. Then the camera lifted up, showing the exit into the hall. From a skewed angle, I could see my door. I could literally see my door in this video. This video, which was recorded from inside the utility closet, which is now replaced by Unit 013. I tossed my phone aside and held my temples. What the hell is happening? Maybe I was having a mind blip, a random window into Alzheimer's or something. I washed my face, gave myself a slap, and did 2 shots of Crown Royal. After 5 minutes of building up the courage, I opened my door to take one last look outside. No sooner had I removed the slide lock than I heard Tony's voice. Iggy! How you doing? He was standing right outside, keys out, ready to enter his Unit 013, smiling at me with a small, jovial grin. He had to be close to 7 feet tall. At least that's what he looked like in this low-ceilinged hallway. And he was looking lankier than before, with smaller eyes. Tony, hey. I tried to sound unperturbed by all my revelations. I swallowed a lump. Sorry for, teasing you earlier. Teasing? Oh no, I thought it was a good act. Very funny. As if I never existed. Really funny idea. I gripped my doorknob tight and tried to act as casual as I could. Play along, my acting coach would say. Play along and see what your partner says. How long do you think we've known each other, Tony? I tried to give him a friendly look. Feels like ages, right? Tony's smile widened as if he had been expecting this question. He drew a circle in the air around me with an exaggerated finger. I've known you since you were a little child, Ignatius. Ever since you were born, 30 miles away. I scoffed, alarmed by this accurate information and by his strange behavior. Tony was putting on a deeper voice, too. Why? Was he now doing a bit? Since I was a child? I asked. Yes, since you were a child. You were inseminated on July 14th, redacted, and you broke your mother's amniotic sac exactly 9 months later. Tony's grew lower, speaking from his stomach. You first recognized yourself in the mirror on December 12th, redacted, and 21 months after that you learned that all things die and that death is permanent. I staggered a little, tried to stay composed. Is this a weird joke, Tony? Who said joke? Tony dropped his pretend deep voice and looked at me with an earnest seriousness I wasn't expecting. I am taking over your place in this community. You have 2 days to move. My hand cramped from my grip on the knob. What? 2 days, Iggy. 2? Yes, I am how you say, observer. I have observed many lives on Earth. Yours looked fun. Lots of friends. Close-by families with young children. All in one apartment. Perfect life for Skevdoc. Skev? My name. You can tell whoever you want. No one will believe you. Skevdoc is already here. Nothing you can do. I was shocked. I didn't quite know who or what I was talking to. But these were literally the words that came out of his mouth. Why did you bring up young children? I will swap them eventually too, with fresh Skevlings. No one will notice or care, just like with you. It might have been the hallway light, but his neck and limbs appeared to have lengthened ever so slightly. His eyes looked smaller too. I took another step back and prepared to close the door. I was overwhelmed by this, by him, by this whole entire evening. But Tony kept talking, pointing directly at my face. "I'm replacing you, Ignatius. They will start to forget you tomorrow, and the day after they will forget you completely. If you are not gone by day 3, you will die." I let go of the doorknob. My hand was shaking too much to hold it. I brought my hands up to my face, and that's when Tony burst into laughter. "Ha ha 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 ha." He slapped the wall beside him. "Ha ha ha ha, gotcha. It's all a joke. Iggy, ha 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 ha, all joke." He draped a hand over my shoulder and gave a squeeze. It was surprisingly hard. It held me quite firmly in place. "Pretty good, right? I am a good actor, right?" I could barely bring myself to look up at his face. When I did, I swear it seemed like his head was towering down from the ceiling, like he was leering at me from the sky. Yes, I mumbled. "You're a good actor. Very convincing." His pinhole eyes glimmered in their sockets. "Good. I think so too." The next day, I called a rideshare and GTFO'd. I had lived in that building for nearly 11 years, and I thought I would live for 11 more, but there was no way in hell I could stay after that night. I don't know how Tony was doing it, but he was draining me, replacing me. I could feel it across my scalp the whole night. My memories with Jess, Marcello, Dee Dee, and everyone else, they were fuzzier than before, fainter. It was like Tony was scooping them out and remolding them into his own. My Uber arrived at 5:13 a.m. and I shoved 2 heavy suitcases inside and did not look back. I spent the next month and a half at a hotel on the opposite side of town before I found a new place. My family all thought I was having a midlife crisis or something, and I leaned into it and told them I was. I said I wanted to try living downtown, meet some new people, give myself a refresh. It seemed to be in line with turning 41, and maybe that's exactly what my life needed. Fast forward past a couple successful auditions and open mic stand-up sets, and managed to meet my new partner, Amelia. She's really nice. It didn't take long for her to ask about all the photos on my Facebook of the old apartment. 10 years of memories in that old 12-plex Evergreen Pines. At least I think that's what it was called. I couldn't remember the name really, or the address. I was caught off guard when she presented me with all the pictures on her iPad. There was a photo of me grilling sausages for some small kid who did not look familiar. There was a photo of me having a beer pong competition with a woman in a Molson brewing hat. She was blowing a raspberry. There was a photo of me singing at some karaoke thing surrounded by people, including that sausage kid and the woman in the Molson brewing hat. After 10 minutes, it got really embarrassing. Amelia was a little offended that I wasn't remembering anyone from before. She accused me of trying to lie about my past or something. I told her that wasn't the case. "Amelia, I'm serious. I know there was a reason I left my old apartment, but I can't remember." "That's ridiculous. It's true, I swear." Of course, the more I started talking about it, the more I actually did remember a little. Despite forgetting all my past neighbors and friends from that apartment, I did not forget about Tony. In fact, Tony was the dark reminder of the whole event. By remembering him, I was able to rewrite this story with pseudonyms and my best guess as to what my life was like before. He was the one who took that all away. But Amelia didn't need to know that. I bit my lip and cheekily murmured, "I really don't remember anything, babe." She stared at me with an unimpressed face, totally blasé. "Oh my God, Iggy, are you doing a bit?" "I can't recall anything at all." "Right, okay, very creepy, knock it off. So do you remember these people or not?" I proceeded to nod and improvise names and backstories for everyone she pointed to. I told her that these were all very close friends, but we sort of drifted apart, and I didn't see them anymore. She seemed to buy it. There was just one last photo of me that caught her attention. A photo at a Super Bowl party where I was holding a plate of nachos above my head. "Why do you look so weird in this one?" My neck looked longer. My eyes looked smaller. I knew that was not me in that photo. I have no idea how I uploaded it onto my own Facebook account. It didn't make sense. but I didn't want to think about it. I wanted it move on. To close this fucked chapter. Oh, yeah, that's what whey protein shakes do to you, I said, doing my best Rodney Dangerfield. Amelia laughed. I deleted the photo. I've never brought up my old apartment again. I always admired that lighthouse. I felt like I needed something to light up and guide my own path too. I was always a bit lost. When I was younger, my father would sometimes take me with him to the lighthouse. We would bring supplies, fish, meat, salt, milk. I would wait in the truck while my father talked to the lighthouse keeper. A short conversation, never more than 30 minutes. I never asked why we brought supplies. My father worked at a sawmill near our house. We weren't a store. Well, I also never asked what they talked about while I was inside the car. It never really mattered to me, only the fact that there was always a new lighthouse keeper. Not every time we went, of course, but they definitely changed frequently. I don't think I remember any of them staying for more than 6 months. Their appearances were similar, always men, old, and with a worn-out look. That I did ask my father about. Why do they change so often, Dad? The lighthouse keepers. Well, son, have you ever thought about living in a lighthouse? Giant waves crashing all night long, living up there? Doesn't it scare you? Maybe the lighthouse keepers just don't get used to it. At least, that's what I remember from our brief conversation. Since I didn't really care, that answer satisfied me and I didn't question him further. But that night, well, I don't know if it was exactly the same night, but before going to bed at my usual time, I had a thought. What scared the lighthouse keepers so much? Was what my father said really enough to scare adults? That night, before sleeping, I imagined what could scare adults. I thought of many things, mermaids, pirates, the kraken, and other sea monsters, until something else came to my mind. The sea. Yes, the sea. I remembered a time when we traveled to my Aunt Margarita's house, my mother's sister. She lived in a house facing the sea, and since it was the end of the year, we went down to the beach to watch the fireworks from the other side of the shore. When midnight struck, everything was so dark on the beach, only the moonlight shining. At 12:01, the sky lit up and we watched the fireworks display. They were beautiful, but when the colors of the fireworks faded and everyone was celebrating and popping champagne, I was staring at the sea. The sea, which always seemed pleasant and beautiful during the day, was now dark, infinite. It swallowed me, almost as if it drowned me without me even being in it. I felt so small and insignificant before that particular sea, even though it was the same sea as always, that the sensation of being consumed haunted me every time I remembered. Well, when I recalled that, it occurred to me that maybe that was what scared the lighthouse keepers, that feeling of powerlessness. I really didn't want to think about it anymore. So I turned off my bedside lamp and took a while before finally falling asleep that night. A year later, I was now in 7th grade. My father had been fired from the sawmill and no longer delivered supplies as often. My life remained normal. Even though my father had lost his job, my mother had a well-paying one, enough to support us. Well, that didn't please my father much, who was quickly looking for a new job. Other than that, my days went on as usual. Until the argument. 2 weeks after my birthday, my parents were very impatient with each other, and I knew why. The lighthouse. At dawn, I think it was around 5:40 in the morning, I woke up to an argument. It was my parents, but the one who seemed angrier was my mother. I slowly went down the stairs so they wouldn't hear me and listened to part of their fight. "You're still spending money on this, Jonathan." "Rosa, you know I have my reasons." "Do I? Because it doesn't seem like it. You just disappear and go to that damn lighthouse, huh?" "Love." Before I let it slide, but now, things aren't easy, Jonathan. Ben is growing up, and you and this damn town seem more different every day. After that, things calmed down a bit, and I went back up to my room. After that argument, my father started avoiding taking supplies when my mother was home. I didn't understand why he kept bringing things to the lighthouse. One time I asked him about it. He gave me an angry look and didn't answer. I didn't ask again. The days went by, and my father kept taking supplies to the lighthouse. Still unemployed, apparently. The town was changing, and finding a job was getting harder. Before, I didn't notice, but now it was clear that the nights lasted longer and the cloudy skies were more constant. On my way to school, I noticed the animals were more restless and vines were taking over buildings, almost as if nature was enraged, reclaiming what was hers. Things in town were strange, as if something was affecting people and animals. It was also eccentric. One day, my biology teacher said we needed to buy boats and inflatable vests because of the rising sea levels. Well, things were weird, but if it had stopped there. On a Wednesday when school was canceled because a driver had crashed a bus into the building at dawn, I saw my father heading to the truck. I saw the box in his hands and immediately knew where he was going. It was 7 in the morning, my mother had just left for work, yet the sky was caught in the twilight between day and night. I grabbed my jacket and ran to the car, asking if I could come along. He didn't agree, but he didn't refuse either. He just stood there, staring at the windshield. So I got in and sat in the back seat. There we were, as always, heading to the lighthouse together. But now, it felt different. I realized it had been a while since my father and I talked as much as before, and I wasn't as excited to get to the lighthouse and see if another keeper had taken over. The road to the lighthouse, a familiar path. It had been part of my routine, or at least it was until a few months ago when I stopped going with my father. But this road was different. It felt different, yet somehow the same. Then I noticed the grass had overtaken the sandy soil of the old road. The sky was dark, almost like night. I looked back. It was as if night ended in the town and began at the lighthouse. Unimaginable. And there at the end of the path I saw the lighthouse, lit, its lights spinning. That sight filled me with terror. I looked at my father, shocked. The landscape around us sent chills down my spine. He didn't react, but he seemed aware of the difference. It even felt like he had sped up, continuing toward the lighthouse. What could I do? Jump out of a moving car? Sure, we weren't going that fast, but it would still be unpleasant. And besides, I was with my father. Where would I be safer? But I can't lie. I was terrified. We arrived at the lighthouse. Everything was dark like night, only the lighthouse's beam illuminating us. My father got out of the truck, grabbed the supply box from the passenger seat, and walked to the lighthouse entrance. Minutes passed. He stood still. Then, in the midst of that horrific scene, I did something I had never done before. I got out of the car. I stepped out. The trees swayed in the intense wind, and the salty scent of the sea filled my nostrils. My legs trembled as I walked toward my father. When I reached him, he moved. He put the box down and started walking toward the edge of the cliff, as if he had been waiting for me. I followed him slowly, looking around at the eerie landscape. My father walked to the edge of the cliff and waited for me, looking back, waiting. At that moment, I was terrified of my own father, but I kept going. Now, standing beside him, I looked at his face. He looked back at me, then gazed forward again. His face seemed tired. Then he pointed to the sea, staring at it. I couldn't ignore it, so I looked where he was pointing. I looked at the sea, and at that moment, it looked exactly like the sea I had seen at Aunt Margarita's house. Exactly. The same dark, endless sea. A sea that even the lighthouse's beam could not penetrate. And as I stared at my old enemy, that feeling returned. I was swallowed by fear.